Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you are returning, thank you as always for your support. I've got some work going on here in my house today, so bear with me with the background noise, you guys. But I've got some new Valentine's DIYs, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. All right, I have a microfiber cloth left over from another project from the Dollar Tree, scarf also left over from another project, also from the Dollar Tree, and this is a piece of fabric also from the Dollar Tree. I went ahead and tried to see if this was going to work. I had a feeling it might not be quite wide enough, and it was not. So I ended up getting another piece of fabric out of my stash that I knew would work. Now, in hindsight, I could have just cut my scarf in half and then used different pieces from the white fabric from the Dollar Tree, but you know what? Hindsight is 2020, and I didn't think of it at the time. I probably would have made the entire project a little bit easier for me, but this worked out just fine. And the reason I am doing this is that the scarf is really sheer, and I don't want you to be able to see through the fabric of the scarf. So I got that all lined up. My fabric is kind of folded over, and so then I just was able to cut right along that fold mark. But the white material is just a single layer. Hopefully that makes sense. But I have everything lined up, and I just folded both pieces in half, trying to find center. And now I'm going to work with my scrap of microfiber cloth to try and figure out which pieces I want to work with here. And I do apologize if you hear any background noise. I am literally sitting in my closet because it's the most kind of insulated area. So we're having some flooring installed downstairs, and it's quite loud, and this is the only time that I have to do the voiceover. So I appreciate your patience with me. You might also hear Sammy's collar rattling because he is here in the closet with me, and he's being a pretty good boy, but yeah, okay. I spoke too soon. But at any rate, thank you for your patience with the background noise. I am getting all of my pieces together here. So now you could certainly create a pattern for this. You guys, I kind of just did it by eye, so to speak. But I'm creating an O, and then I will also be creating an X. So, and then I'm going to be embroidering these, not embroidering, but blanket stitching them onto what will be our pillow. So cutting out my O, I cut out the circle first, and now I will go ahead and cut out the inside of the O. I've got it folded just to try and help make it symmetrical, and try and just keep everything nice and even. So once I've got my O set, I want to make sure my X isn't huge in proportion, compared to my O. So I am now cutting out the fabric a little bit. We're cutting it down a little bit, right? So that it is going to be about the same height as my O. So once I have that trimmed down, I will be able to go ahead and cut the X part out as well. We'll move through this as quickly as we can here. But if you are new to my channel and you have not yet subscribed, thank you, first of all, for being here and for watching. And I hope that you'll consider subscribing, and make sure you hit that bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video. I absolutely adore all of my subscribers. I would not be here if it were not for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the amazing support. So I've got this other piece cut in half. You saw me cutting out kind of a triangle shape. I'm rounding my edges, folded it in half, and cut out another one on that other side to try to start creating our X shape. I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half again, and then I think I folded a fourth time. Yeah, a third time, excuse me. Second time? Oh my goodness, I can't count. But now I have it all cut down. I did go back and trim it down a little bit because I felt like they were too tall for what I'm trying to fit on the pillow here. Once I'm going to have all my seams sewn, I want to make sure that they fit. So here you can see they're going to fit a little bit better. I'm trying to figure out how big my seam will be on the right side so that I can make sure I'm getting these all centered. That was a little bit of a fail on my part, but I was able to fix it later on. So you'll see all of that in a moment. Now, you guys, the struggle was real on this blanket stitch that I wanted to do for the life of me. And usually, you know, I don't do it very often, so I always have to kind of remember how I did it the last time, and I usually can figure it out pretty quickly. When I say that I redid this at least 5 times, it is no exaggeration. So I was getting so frustrated with myself. I finally went on YouTube and found a video that would show me how to do the blanket stitch, because for the life of me, I could not remember. So I finally got myself sorted out, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch all around the O and the X. I still was struggling a little bit even with the video. I just had to keep referencing it. Once I got going, I was good, but I just, for whatever reason, was having a mental block on how to do this stitch. And it's not a difficult stitch, so please don't let my challenges dissuade you from trying this. Clearly, I am not going to be the right person to try to explain or teach you how to do this. I mean, yeah, but there are really great little tutorials on YouTube that are very simple and show you exactly how to do this. But essentially, you kind of come down from the bottom, you come up through, and then you grab the thread in the loop of your stitch so that you can go ahead and make sure you have that kind of L shape going on. And I am sorry because Sammy is like climbing all over me, but you know what? Find a way or make a way. That's what I'm doing today, because I got to get this video published for you guys to see. All right, so now we're settling down, hopefully. All right, but here I've come in a little bit closer to give you a better idea of the stitch. So just working my way all the way around the O. I'll be doing the inside of the O as well. You can see I kind of flipped the thread up, and yeah, this is just a hot mess, you guys. I'm sorry that it's not a better demonstration, but worked my way all the way around the O. And then for the X, I did pin it down, and I do recommend doing that, because when I was working with the O, I did find it was kind of bunching a little bit and puckering in places, because I was just trying to hold it with my hands as I was doing the stitching. Definitely recommend pinning everything down. It'll take you like 30 seconds to pin it, and then it won't move on you. And the X was definitely easier to work with, because I wasn't having to compete with the fabric moving it around. So I got that all trimmed as well. And then on the back side, I am just going to anchor it with some knots. I am not going all the way through the fabric. In fact, I was just checking to make sure I hadn't gone all the way through, because I don't want this showing on the other side. So just knotting it a few times, making sure that it's going to be fastened off. Of course, it got all bunched up on me there. So got that straightened out, knotted, and then I'm going to run my needle through some of the stitches that were made kind of in a line. You can kind of see over on the right side where I did that with the O, but drawing it through there just to kind of anchor the tail so that it's less likely to unknot. All right, so we've got this done. Now, I really should have pressed this. I should have ironed it. It's a little bit wrinkly. I did not. I figured, you know, with the fiber fill, putting pressure on it, and over time that the fabric would probably relax. Yeah, the correct way to do it would have been to press it. I did not. So forgive me for that bit of laziness. So I'm going to go around, and I am pinning the, I've got it obviously inside out, but I'm pinning it all around. The bottom right there, I did leave a big gap on the right so that it was going to be large enough for me to get my hand in. And I'm going to go ahead and continue pinning it all the way around. And then I started to sew it by hand. Now, Fortunately, my sewing machine is fixed, so I am going to actually grab my sewing machine in a minute, but I do want you to know that you can, if you don't have a sewing machine, you can still create this project, right? It will take time. I'm using, I think this is called a back stitch, where I kind of overlap my stitches, but it definitely would take quite a bit of time to do it that way. So I pulled out my sewing machine and I am just going to run it right through the machine. I was a little bit careful with it when I first started working with it because I didn't want to jam it up again. So I was going through and pulling out the pins as I went, but then I figured, you know what, it seemed to be working just fine. So I went ahead and just sewed right over them after that. Pulling it right side out and getting it ready to stuff. And this is where I realized that the seam that I created on the right side of the pillow was not as wide as I had planned for. So my X and my O are way off center. And this was bothering me enough that I decided that I was going to flip it inside out again and sew a new seam on that side. Oh, goodness. Simple project that I made very difficult for myself. So I've decided to kind of check and see how much of a seam I really needed. It was like 2 inches, you guys. So I just put it back through the sewing machine again, sewed off another 2-inch seam, and then I trimmed off the excess fabric. I left probably 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Just so that I didn't get too close to my stitches. And I also cut off the corners. Just make sure you don't get too close to your stitches when you do that. But when you clip the corners like that, it just helps when you flip it right side out because you don't have a lot of fabric competing with what you're doing, right? So now I'm using a regular fiber fill to stuff my pillow. I got it nice and full, and now I am ready to seal up that opening. So I'm just kind of rolling the fabric into itself to create a seam that is uniform with what has already been sewn. Just pinching it all together, making sure that it's nice and lined up, and pinning it so that it's not going to get away from me. Once I have that all pinned, I can come in and sew it. I think this is called a slip stitch. Forgive me, you guys, because I am a very basic sewer, so I don't really know a lot of the names of the stitches, but I'm essentially coming in between the 2 pieces of fabric that I'm trying to sew, and I'm grabbing one side, making sure I'm going through both layers of my fabric, so the scarf and the white lining fabric, and then I'm going to the other side and stitching that side to kind of weave them, to pull them together. Right? So I don't really want my, well, not really, I don't want my stitches to be seen on this. I want them as hidden as possible. So by doing it this way, I am kind of creating an invisible, not invisible, a hidden stitch, so to speak. So I got that all sewn together and I fastened it off the same way I did on the back side, right? With my knot and sliding it through. And that was it. But let me know what you think of the final result. DIY number 2. All right, I have this heart-shaped wreath form. It's a, oh my goodness, words, what are they? Grapevine form. And I've got these beautiful flowers that my subscriber Rose had sent to me a while back, and I've had them in my stash, and I decided this would be a great project for some of them. I'm going to create kind of an ombre effect with the flowers. I was a little worried that they would be a little bit too large for this small little wreath frame that I have, but I think it worked out really nicely. So I'm starting out by just cutting off my little picks. I'm leaving about a 3 to 4 inch length of the stem on each of these. And I'm going to start with the ivory color at the top and then move to the blush and then the, I'm going to call it, I don't know, a solid pink. I don't know what else you'd call it, medium pink, and then the deeper purplish pink tone, mauve kind of color. So I am starting at the bottom with the darkest color. I only used one of those, and then I have a couple of the medium pink color, and then I'm moving on to the blush. And I'm literally just kind of pushing the stems down into the wreath form, and it was secure enough that I did not feel the need to use any hot glue at all for this project. So that makes things pretty easy. So just working my way around the wreath, and I'm trying to decide which way I want those to be facing. So I opted to go the opposite direction at this point, and then I will be creating a bow, because I did want to make a bow for this, and I was trying to figure out where I was going to put that. And I thought, you know what, it'll look perfectly natural and in a perfect place to have it kind of in the middle there. So I did have one stem sticking out a little bit there, so I just trimmed that off and decided I was going to trim these other two just because of the way that the wreath form is shaped. I thought I might have some other issues with the stems kind of going through and sticking out. So got that all set. Counting my roses, I decided I wanted to put another one up at the top, so I've got another one at the ivory. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a bow there. I pulled out this really pretty satin ribbon. It is wired, but I was a little worried that it was going to be too wide. I think this is 1.5 inches, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 2 inches, but I think it's 1.5 inches. But I created 3 loops on either side. I'm just kind of wrapping them back and forth. Yeah, just kind of any which way, really. There wasn't really a rhyme or reason. I was just trying to make sure I had 3 loops on either side. And then I will cut off a piece to create the bow part in the middle. I did leave long tails. I kind of had this vision of the tails kind of floating down from the wreath. But I'm taking that smaller piece, tying it through the middle. As soon as you tie off your bow like this, it will get a little wonky, so just be patient with yourself, and don't worry if the loops get a little weird when you first tie it off, because you can always fluff them back up again. Now, in hindsight, looking at this, I actually kind of like this a lot more than I did at the time. When I was putting this on there, I felt like I wasn't covering up enough of the grapevine there. I felt like you were going to be able to see stuff that I didn't want seen. So I set that bow aside, and I decided to make a fuller bow. And so I'm just taking a whole bunch of the ribbon, and I'm going to go back and forth here. At first I was going to make a really long tail on it, and then I decided that I would do a faux tail. So I'm going back and forth until I get 6 loops on either side. And once I have all of those loops set, I'll go ahead and I'm going to notch. Actually, I'm going to cut that off first. And then I did, create another, or cut off another length of ribbon to make the tail piece. I'm not going to need that just yet, but I went ahead and cut that off. So now I'm going to cut notches for my bow, just trying to find center there, cutting notches. You don't want to cut too far into this. I cut not even 1/4 inch. So did that on both sides, and now I have a chenille stem that I'm wrapping around there. Before I seal that up though, I'm going to drop my ribbon in that's going to be my faux tails. So kind of right in the middle. So they were kind of like half and half on either side of the chenille stem. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I twisted the chenille stem off until that was all ready and complete. And now I'm fluffing up my bow. So I'm gonna dovetail all of my little ends here, and then I'll be ready to attach it to the wreath. So I'm just using the same chenille stem, twisting it around on my wreath until it's nice and secure, and then I'm going to bend that over and twist it some more just so that I can get it all nice and tucked away and it won't be poking at anything or anyone. And that's that. Now, I felt like this bow might be a little bit too large. So I went from not enough bow, so I thought, to way too much bow. Maybe. I don't know. I'll show you the end result on this and on what I'm going to do next. And I'll ask you to tell me which one you think is better. So at any rate, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take this. Oh, nope. First, I decided I was putting another flower in there. So it needs another flower, tucking that in. So this is really very pretty, but again, I felt like maybe it was just too much bow. So I went ahead and took that bow off, and I'm going to create a new bow. This is bow number 3, third time's the charm, maybe. I've got this really pretty pink gingham or buffalo check ribbon. I didn't have a lot of it left, so I was able to create, I think it was maybe 4 loops on either side, or maybe it was 4 loops on one side and 3 on the other. I don't honestly recall. But I got that tied off. I essentially made it the same way that I did the pink bow before. And then I made a second one with my, this is a pink with white polka dot ribbon that I created a second bow with. And then once I had both of those created, just making sure everything is nice and centered, I went ahead and I tied both of them together. So I just set one on top of the other, and I used the same ties to tie a knot in each of those. And I did it twice, right? So I did with one and then the other because I didn't want anything slipping or sliding. So those are nice and secure. I went ahead and dovetailed all of those ends as well. I'm just folding them in half and holding them between my fingers to clip them, checking out what it's going to look like. I think this is definitely better. So, but let me know what you think. I don't know. I don't hate the original bow. I mean, hate is a strong word, right? I don't dislike the original bow, but I don't know. This is very different, right? So one is probably a little bit more romantic, and this one is probably a little bit more country chic. I don't really know, but let me know which one you think is better. DIY number 3. All right, this little kisses sign is from the Dollar Tree, as is the seahorse little wood panel sign that you see here. Now I want to cut that off, but my little hand miter saw, it's not wide enough for this. So I'm gonna just score it, really. I started out with my X-Acto knife, and then ultimately I grabbed out my big box cutter because the X-Acto knife was just taking forever, and I was like, you know what, I have a box cutter, I bet that'll go through it faster. So just scoring it and bending it and scoring it some more and bending it until it came apart for me. Then I just sanded off that little edge to make sure everything was nice and neat. And now with my kisses sign, I am painting it this nice light pink. This is a paint color that I had mixed up some time back. I used my vintage Victorian and just added white, Adirondack white chalk paint to it until I got the tone that I wanted, and I've just been using it in various other projects ever since. So now while that's drying, I am kind of making my own stamp. I honestly didn't know if this was going to work, you guys, but I figured, you know what, I'm going to try, because I wanted lips. I wanted to be able to put little kisses all over my sign, and I had checked my stash to see if I had any kind of rub-on transfers or anything that I could use for that, and I did not. So I'm just using my little fine scissors here that came with some of my Cricut supplies, and I am cutting it into a makeup sponge. So I use these for stenciling quite often. And so, yeah. So I was testing it out with the pink, then I moved on to the red, and this is Imperial Red by Home Decor. And you know what? I thought it came out pretty okay. So I don't know. I'll let you be the judge and let me know if you think that this worked out. But I was just trimming it off a little bit more to try to avoid some of the smudging that I was noticing here. But it was really just clipping away lower down on the sponge, if that makes any sense at all. So once I was satisfied with what was happening, I went ahead and I placed my little kiss marks all over my sign. They're all a little bit different, I guess, because of the variation in pressure that I was applying as I did it, but I think it all worked out in the end. So once I had those all on there and they were dry, I did decide that I was going to come in. Oh, not just yet. I'm going to show you first what it looks like with the kisses sign. I was, and as you know, I'm very visual. I have to see things and then I decide if I'm going to do more or less. So this is where I decided I was coming with my black Sharpie, going to define all of the little lips a little bit better. Just kind of giving them an outline and then kind of lining where the differentiation between the two lips was. So you can do this however it makes you happy, right? So if you don't care for the way that I did it, by all means, I'm sure that somebody's got a better idea than what I'm showing here. But I did decide that my kisses sign needed a little something more, so I took this magenta toned acrylic paint marker and I am just outlining the entire sign. Eventually I decided it was going to be easier if I set it down flat, so that's what I did. I decided to color in that top heart. I'm just leaving a little square for kind of like a shine kind of mark on my heart, if that makes any sense. Oh boy. And just going to continue to outline the entire sign all the way around. Once I had that set, I was able to go ahead and apply it to my sign. This is finally where I have it. I'm satisfied with it. Using hot glue, I'm working pretty quickly here because I don't want the hot glue to cool before I can get this placed down. I am using the low setting on my glue gun. And then I wanted to try and camouflage those little holes in the metal sign. I started painting it in just with the pink, but then I was like, you know what if I just put some hot glue in that hole and then paint over it? I thought maybe it would work better, and it did. Now, the one on the left worked better than the one on the right that I'd been messing with. So, yeah, but it camouflaged the holes quite nicely. So I was pleased with that. So once I was done with that, just went over it with a little bit more paint, but I pulled out another ribbon from my stash. This is just a plain, skinny pink satin ribbon, and I'm going to be using this as my hanger. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to keep this on here. I was just going to wrap it around either side. So wrapping it around, bringing it across the top in a moment, and then down, wrapping it around the other side. But then I was worried about whether it would end up pulling away from itself with the pressure on the hot glue. So I wasn't sure that it was going to stay adhered to the sign. So I did end up ultimately framing out this entire piece with the ribbon, and you'll see that in just a moment. But just trimming that off, I want to make sure that everything is lined up properly and that my ribbon isn't twisted, so that's why I keep wrapping it the way that I do. But I'm going to secure it the same way on this side as I did on the other side. Just made sure that my end was trimmed nicely, laying down some hot glue. And again, I'm using this on the low setting, which is why you don't see me using my finger protectors. I'm still being careful because I still can burn myself with it on the low setting, but just not nearly as bad as when it's on the high setting. So I'm being careful. So definitely recommend using finger protectors when working with hot glue. I guess my fingers are getting kind of used to it at this point, but when it's on the hot setting, or the high setting, I definitely use the finger protectors more than I do when it's not. Probably not as often as I should. But as you can see here, I just added a little dot of hot glue to the top of each of those ribbons, and I'm laying a piece across the top, and now I'm going to anchor it in the back. And this is largely um, due to the fact that I don't want the hanger ribbon to pull away from the top of my sign with the pressure of holding up the sign. So this is going to just anchor that, but I actually like the way that it looks better with the ribbon anyway. So it actually turned out to be really, really positive. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is less of a functional and more of an aesthetic piece down at the bottom, but I went ahead and did it down along the bottom as well, and I anchored it on the back the same way. So just using a little bit of the hot glue and getting that all situated. And then this piece is really done after that, you guys. So I hope that you enjoy this as much as I enjoyed making it, but let me know your thoughts on this one. DIY number 4. All right, this is going to be a quick and easy project. I have from Chalk Couture, this is Shimmer Plum, and the other one is Pomegranate. And the pomegranate is flat, it's not shimmery. But I'm giving my wood scrap, this was from the garage that Rich had cut down for me a while back, and I gave that a coat of Adirondack white chalk paint. And now I'm using my transfer from Chalk Couture. I'm making sure that what do they call this? I want to say fluff it, but that's not right. Fuzz. I'm fuzzing my transfer. I have been remiss in doing this in the past, and then it ends up being really hard to get off, or it pulls up my paint or whatever else. So I made sure I fuzzed it several times per the instructions. Go figure, I am following instructions. Lining this up on here, and then I'm going to come in with my little squeegee. I don't know if it's called a squeegee, but that's what I'm using or calling it. And I'm using my plum shimmer, or my shimmer plum, on the U part, and you just press it right through. I'm always amazed at how nicely this turns out, quite honestly. And I have been a Chalk Couture representative, I guess you could call that. So I have information down in my description box if you are interested in taking a look at that. I don't do a lot with it, to be quite honest. But I liked having the ability to get the discount and all of the transfers, and yeah, I just think it's fun. And I get my little monthly transfer in the mail. It just makes me happy. So here we go with the reveal on this. I think it's so cool. And I can reuse this thing like a whole bunch of times. I hear, 10 or a dozen times or so at least. But I think it turned out really nicely. So once it's dry, I'm going to flip it over. And this is where I realized that I didn't paint the back side of it. So before I put on my little wall hanger piece, I'm going to go ahead and I sanded that down because it was kind of protruding a little bit. It was like bulky. But anyway, I gave it a good coat of chalk paint. I helped it dry with my heat gun, and then I can come in and put this little hanger on the back. I'm just going to make sure I have it lined up, and then I'll be able to screw it right in. And this is something that I wanted to make for Rich. I gave it to him last night, and I think he likes it. So maybe we'll see if he hangs it on his wall. But I just thought it was a really sweet sentiment, and I don't know. I love this. I think it turned out really nice, but let me know what you think. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the projects. If you did, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much. Take good care. Bye.